now that Ryan Day's won a national championship, he has been given a grace period by this fan base, and this all relates to the previous topic we just discussed. How long does that grace period last before the seat gets hot again
with our fan base?
No, that's yeah. Okay, so it's a two-part question.
Ask me again December the 1st.
Oh no, Chris. No.
No, I'm not saying he hasn't earned it. I'm just saying, given our fan base, ask me again December
First
1st.
incompletion against Texas, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. What have you done for me lately? To your point.
Exactly. Yeah, okay. I know he won the Natty, but you got to win these games.
All right, chat. Here we go. It's
yeah.
I might run. No, I'm not going to do that. I was going to run over to YouTube and I was going to make a poll, but I'm not.
And I'm going to surprise you, Eric. So.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Should I get my heart medication?
Let's fast forward through this season to November, whatever the game is.
Yeah.
If he loses his 5th in a row, at that point, is the fan base back on the fire Ryan Day train again?
Really depends on the circumstances.
I would agree with that. I mean, if you go in and you lose a close game
and you're 11
in Ann Arbor and you end up making a run in the playoff again, right. I think that I think what happens if he loses to Michigan again.
Don't say that. At Michigan.
No, I'm just going to tell you, if he loses to them again, but he makes another playoff run, and let's say he goes out and wins another national title.
Right.
I think what everybody is saying about the insignificance of the game really comes to fruition, and people start to get on board with that. It's just another game.
Yeah. Well, was it last week? Johnny and Corey, or was it 2 weeks ago? I think Johnny said, I would gladly trade a win over that team for a national championship every time. Like, it doesn't the significance of the game, it is different, but again,
but he's going to hear the boo birds, Eric.
Oh yeah.
He's going to hear the boo birds. He's going to hear people being critical. But for me, I look at this and we ask a question, and I don't want to get ahead to the next or where we're headed about, how long should he have before his next one? I'll hold on to that. But I think that he has earned the right to a little bit of grace.
Yeah.
Given the fact that he just made the most significant run in college football history.
Okay. So, Chris, I'm going to put you on the hot seat.
Okay.
Because it's a two-part question, because you have the game and then you have national championship. So, at Ohio State, how long of a grace period should you be given before you're asked or expected to win another national championship? Because let's keep in mind, we've only had one coach ever win more than one. That's Woody Hayes. He won 5. No other coach has ever won more than one. Paul Brown won 1. You had Tressel that won 1. Urban Meyer that won 1. And now Ryan Day that won 1. So but
Eric,
long?
You go back to that. There's only one active coach or 2 active coaches who have won more than one, correct?
Dabo Sweeney,
and
Kirby Smart.
And Dabo's got to be not hot seat, but maybe.
Yeah.
Well, and I was going to get to him here shortly, but
for me, I think you've got to give a 3 to 5 year cushion.
Yeah.
To me, I think he has to have 3 to 5 years, because especially coming off the team we just had, I know expectations are going to be high. I'm going to have high expectations. But we've talked about this. My high expectations are, let's go to 10-2. Let's make the Michigan thing right this year.
Yeah.
Get back in, win that Big Ten title, and let's make a run in the playoffs. I'd love to see us win the Natty again, but let's make a run. And if we do that at 10-2 again this year, making that run, I'm not going to be upset. I'm not going to be happy if we don't beat the team up north, but he's earned that little bit of grace, that little bit of faith from the fan base. Because I mean, you look at the coaches who have done this, Eric. Like I said, but there's 2 active. But I mean, all these other Nick Saban and Urban Meyer are the only ones who have been recently active.
Mm-hmm.
You got to go back to guys like
hold on, Jimbo Fisher.
Jimbo Fisher. I always forget about Dumbo.
Right.
But you got to go back to guys like Frank Leahy and guys like Tom Osborne, to get guys who were winning multiple national championships prior to that little group. So, yeah, I think that we've got to, and I know this is gonna. It sounds hypocritical coming from me, Eric. It really does.
Right.
But I came out and I admitted I was wrong about Ryan Day, and he has earned that faith, that trust from this fan base at this point. So.
Okay, so you said 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. Ryan
Days Beer said 4. What do you think, Petey?
2, depending on factors. This is presuming, knock on wood, that he loses to Michigan again this year, and if he doesn't win the national title, even if they make it to the national championship, right? I think that's your trump card. You could lose theoretically to Michigan every year. How are you going to fire a coach if he keeps winning national titles 1 out of every 2 years, even, right? 3 years if you give him that much, to Chris's point. But I think if you don't do both, that for like a couple of years, you're gone. I think what he's done is, you use the word grace period, Chris. That's a perfect word. He's bought himself a grace period with this national title because he lost to Michigan. If he had lost to both, let's say they lost the national title game this past year and they had lost to Michigan, like, I think he's probably still in seat. But then if you lose to Michigan again, like, presuming that he would lose the national title or they wouldn't win it again, he could be out. And another just point I want to bring up, we kind of alluded to this earlier, like, pressure you guys put on yourselves and your coaches. There's all this talk about what scenario will Ohio State let Day go. Day can also walk on his own if he wants to at any point. I understand it's a lot to walk away from with the contract. They just extended him as well. He's making a lot of money. But he also, remember, after that Michigan loss, not just himself, but his family, he came out and said, was getting a lot of pressure and a lot of heat. Can you imagine his kids going playing on the playground, going to school, and what they're having to go through? Like, he said he had to hire more security. I mean, that there comes a point, like, money does talk, but there's also mental health, and he's big on that. He's a big advocate for that, proponent of that. And when your family is being threatened, like, and he wasn't the only one. We know about Jack Sawyer, like, couldn't even, go into establishments without being hassled. So I'm just saying, like, there's also that side of the spectrum too. He could leave. NFL team comes calling as a head coach. I actually wrote a podcast. I did a podcast on this. I thought he might leave for Chicago. I really did. Even if they won the national title, just because of the unnecessary pressure and, stuff after the Michigan game that happened. Like, I saw demeanor after that Michigan game, him standing on the field. We all saw it. He was just like stone faced. Mm-hmm. And obviously nobody knows what he's thinking. I'm not a mind reader, but I know after that, I presumed he was feared for his safety a little bit, what repercussions would come of that. So I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer here. I just like to point that out as well, that he also has a choice.
Corey, how many years of a grace period are you given?
It's tough. Depends. It's like saying, what is he winning outside of the national title? That's the key component. If he's winning Big Ten titles, if he's back to beating the team up north, then he gets a longer grace period. As long as he's competing to get to the national title, they know that he's a guy who can win it. Mm-hmm. Do you have him in contention every year? And are you beating the team up north and fulfilling those other responsibilities as an Ohio State head coach? If he goes another 4 or 5 years with doing almost like he did this past year of doing nothing of the sort, maybe even losing an embarrassing bowl game here or there, I think you probably get 3 years and your seat gets really hot. I think, man, imagine how hot his seat would have been this year if he didn't win the Natty or didn't go on a run. He'd come into this year. He would have. I still maintain he'd have been fired up Tennessee if he'd have blown out by Tennessee. But if let's say he gets by Tennessee and they say, nah, we're going to keep him, his seat would be just, blazing going into this year. And it'd been a terrible year for him because all the question marks on the team right now. But I will say that I saw his interview with Colin Cowherd to what Pete was saying. I saw his interview with Colin Cowherd, and Pete, you're absolutely right, by the way. He said that when he got hired by Ohio State to be the head coach, that Nina cried. And they said there's tears of joy. She goes, no, this is the last time our family's ever going to be normal. Because they knew he says I didn't even get it at the time, but she knew at that moment how tough this position is on a family.
Yeah.
And maybe it's starting to catch up to him how tough it really is. But I'll tell you, for him to say something like after losing to the team up north, which obviously is just so deflating for all of Columbus, especially in that situation, we don't get the revenge on Oregon. We don't get to go to the Big Ten title game. We don't even know what's going to happen in the playoff. For him to say, I just got to fight like heck to get out of this, and to do it. I have full faith and confidence in Ryan Day at this point, just because of that statement alone. The dude didn't give up, didn't quit, said, screw it, I'm leaving. We're gonna go out there, make a run, and go win a natty. And he did it. And I'm like, you know what? If anybody can turn this rivalry around, get us back to the Big Ten title, get us back competing for national titles year after year. I'm not saying win them year after year. That's ridiculous. But competing, getting to the second and third round of the playoffs every most years. It's Ryan Day at this point. He's got my full faith because of those statements alone.
Tressel coached for 10 years. He won one national championship in year number 2.
Mm-hmm. Went to 3 though.
But he played in 3 national championships. Now the difference in this equation than the equation that you can apply to Tressel, or the equation that you could apply to Urban Meyer, or even the equation that you apply to Woody Hayes, is that the eras of the postseason are very different. Mm-hmm. Woody Hayes didn't have a postseason. He had a bowl game. You win 10 games, and then you go to a bowl game. They didn't even have a Big Ten championship. Same thing with Tressel. Tressel didn't have Tressel had the BCS, right?
Yeah.
Urban Meyer had the playoff, but it was a 14 playoff. A 12-team playoff, I think, changes the equation a little bit here, because I believe getting to the playoff is the expectation at Ohio State. Like, if you don't get to the playoff every single year, that's when I think the fan base is going to be very chirpy.
Hey, Eric.
NFL model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can answer for you right now. When the furthest date out from now, when Ryan Day wins the national title, it's 2 years. Because we won the first 4 team, we won the first 12 team, and we're going to win the first 16 team.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what we do. We're innovators.
I wish they would change it every year now. Just keep adding teams. Make it 112.
Hey, Adam, take them away. I don't care what you do. Just change that number every year, and we got this thing.
That's funny. I saw that. I did not. I'm sure you guys realized it right away. When I saw it on social, I was like, "Dang, that's crazy."
We keep validating the new system
with a third string QB, so it's like legitimate.
Yeah. Right. This is fascinating to me, because if you take into account where Ryan Day was and where he is, and then you gauge the pulse of this fan base, things can change very quickly. All right. But I look at it like, and I think, Chris, you alluded to this, I don't have national championship or bust expectations on this year's team.
No.
I just don't.
Mm-hmm.
They lost way too much, man.
Mm-hmm.
I think for the most part, the fan base, although there are some of them who are like, hey, we're the next dynasty of college football because Nick Saban's not around. And I would love for that to happen. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think that the odds or the chances of that happening are very good, because I just don't think in this college football era, like you said, Petey, that is the NFL model now. You're going to have consistent dynasties a la Alabama, right? And so I look at this and say, okay, my expectations for this season are if you can get to 10-2 and get back into the playoffs, job well done. And on top of that, I want to beat the team up north. That's what I want. I think you said that, Chris. Like,
Yeah.
that was what you wanted to see, Ryan. And I want that for Ryan Day more than myself at this point.
Well, Eric, he's changed the narrative about everything else.
Right.
He couldn't win the big game. He was what 2-5 going into last year against top 5 teams. He's got a winning record against top 5 teams. Couldn't win a national title. He won a national title. That Michigan thing is the only thing still hanging over his head. I want him to fix that. And like you said, as much for him as for anybody. But this is the other thing. You mentioned how we have somewhat tempered expectations for next year. But you look at the media and CBS Sports specifically. I told you earlier that they were the odds-on favorite to win again. The media likes to call us out as the lunatic fringe, Eric.
Yeah.
But then they perpetuate it. They poke the bear.
Sure.
They're what caused us to go nuts.
The devil made us do it.
Pete, I saw you making writing some notes down, man. Do you have any last thoughts about this topic?
Yeah, Mike Tomlin talking NFL model, right? I think that's a perfect example of team first round exit with the Steelers, and then it's a little less recent, but didn't Marvin Lewis have good playoff appearances? Like not good as in made it far, but a good number of playoff appearances for the Bengals. And then eventually they were like, yeah, we're sick of just losing early, but it took forever for that to happen. And Tomlin is still there. And they haven't won since was it 2006 with Roethlisberger? Like forever ago. The Super Bowl, which is their trophy.
He has been there like 20 years, hasn't he?
So I think like and I agree on the, this ain't gonna be like a dynasty anymore. I think Georgia, had it stayed the same, was the next dynasty, and that's obviously, I think it's out, and it's just is what it is. It's funny, like using an SEC example, knowing and interacting with those fan bases. Like I hear on podcasts all the time, oh, the SEC had a down year in 2023. You guys remember that was the narrative. Now this year, again, second year in a row, they don't make the national title. They don't have a single team in it. And again, 2024, oh, this was a down year. No, I think we're done with down years. I think it's exactly what you're saying, is that college football's just changed. NIL parity, guys, it is what it is. Quinshon Judkins up and transferred to a Big Ten school. Evan Stewart up and transferred to a Big Ten school.
Seth McLaughlin
just transferred to Michigan right away. These are guys that would have had to stay in seat at their schools or lose a year of athletic eligibility. It's just fact. It's not anybody hating on any conference or any dynasty. You're right. It's an NFL model.
You brought up Georgia. Let's go there. Let's go there.
Let's get there really fast. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, when I was driving through Georgia on the freeway, they had a sign that said tolls, like it was cash, easy pass, Bulldogs. And I thought, what what's going on?
Great.
Well, they got their own lane. They got to keep those guys as far away from the other traffic as possible.
Right? Yeah. Okay. How many more years does the Georgia fan base give Kirby before he's on the hot seat? Yes, he has 2. But how many more years is that going to be, Pigskin Petey? We'll ask you first, man.
I've not brought this up yet, Eric, because I thought it was crazy even thinking it. Thank you so much for bringing it up. I thought, there's going to come a point, right? I think it's 2 more years, presuming they don't win it this year. So technically 1 more year. Let's say they don't win it all this year. And Rick, if you're still here, let us know what you think.
That would be 3
I
years.
think heading in then to 2026, you would have to start having that conversation, right?
I think the seat begins to get warm.
Yeah.
And I also think it's how, what happens. Like, do they go back to the college football playoff again and then get boat raced by, like, they got beat by Notre Dame. Let's say they get boat raced by Penn State or something like that, and you're like, you just lost to Notre Dame and Penn State, right? The thing is, and the thing is that Georgia's going to do. Here's what Georgia's going. They're so predictable, guys. It's so, the playoffs are so much harder because we play in the SEC and it's just such a harder conference. Like, you're gonna hear that narrative, right? Like, that's totally.
But they're
what it's
going to play 9 conference games, Eric.
But check this out. This is what's really unique. Let's say Alabama doesn't make the college football playoff again this year. I think DeBoer's on the hot seat.
100%.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a reason. There's a reason when you talk about those two schools specifically. And it comes down to one thing: Nick Saban. Nick Saban set the expectation.
He's a Woody Hayes to them.
He is their Woody Hayes at Alabama, but also the guy that Kirby came from.
Bama has 2 Woody Hayes, though.
yeah, they have, right? But Kalen DeBoer is Earl Bruce.
Yes.
They will not be happy with 9-3 seasons.
What have you always said when it comes to following the legend? You don't want to be the guy that follows the guy. You want to be the guy that follows him.
Yeah, but he's also following the legend in the era that retired the legend because of the NIL era. Saban didn't want to deal with it. DeBoer's struggling with it. He's even talking about revenue sharing because the LCC schools can't get the money from the alumni that the northern schools seem to be able to do, and that's what's even the playing field.
I fully agree with that, and it's sad to me that it's changed like this, because imagine doing your job, whatever profession you're in. Like, let's say you're trained to be an accountant. You went to school for it. You studied for it. You've been an accountant for 10, 15 years. You're really good at it. And then your boss comes to you and says, your job's changing. You have to figure it out or you're fired. You're going to be our IT person.
Yeah.
You didn't go to school for IT. You're not trained in IT. My analogy here is these guys, from the time they're playing, if they play, coaching is GAs, all the way up through multiple stops. Any coach, not just DeBoer, not just Kirby, not just Saban, like, their life has been football playing, football coaching, X's and O's. And now you're being told you got to be the marketing person, you got to be the PR person. Some, like Bielema, embraces it. You've heard him. But like some don't. And you're getting spring games canceled and this and that. Like, there's so much other stuff that's like, oh, I was an accountant, now I'm an IT person. Like, different type of stuff that goes into this job now. But I think, getting back to the Georgia point too, like, I fully agree. It's not like, oh, we're in the toughest conference. No, I just talked about the transfers. Like, things are even. It's just because there's parity in football now. I think Georgia's problem will continue to be Mike Bobo, their OC. He's way too vanilla.
100%.
And thank God I just posted a tweet on X the other day comparing him and Bill O'Brien. So I'm so glad that he got rid of himself, because I was fearful for you guys.
He fixed that problem for us.
Yeah.
Well, he's
I had Bryce Young for 2 years and didn't win a national title.
Well, they did have all those injuries that one year against Georgia, didn't they? They had like Jalen Waddle and John Mechie, and there was a couple guys. It was Williamson. It was actually a Jamo who got hurt as well. I mean, I kind of give him a pass on that. You lose every receiver on your freaking roster. It makes it harder. But yeah, but that's the thing is like, does Kirby Smart in 1980 would be safe for the next 20 years? But that's just not how we. They call us the lunatic fringe. We're not the only ones. Because I remember when we beat Alabama in 2014, people were calling in Paul Feinbaum saying, I think it's Saban's time's over. I just don't see it anymore. Like, really? Because he lost to Urban Meyer?
Right.
What are you talking about? It's like, you want to get rid of Saban, you idiots? I just think I think every fan base of a team that experiences a lot of success, they get so spoiled they become lunatics.